Well, let's get into that right now. So, yes, for those of you that haven't seen, I went and visited my old friend Piers Morgan this week. It's been a while since I've been invited on his show, actually. It's changed a little bit. And it definitely qualifies for what's trending because so far it's had about 500,000 views. So he's got quite an audience as Mr. Morgan.
This is the thing with free speech. You can still make your point. You can still make your point. What is it that you can't say? It's not my fault that people can't articulate themselves well. You can talk about crime statistics based on gender and sexuality and race, whatever you want.
Why
You just can't use discriminatory
why
words
should
to
a
do
young
it.
care worker who's angry because she's been assaulted and is in
Basically, for those of you that haven't seen it, there was a woman in the UK that was arrested for using a derogatory term to describe a gay man in a text to a former friend. She got arrested for it. She got given some community service. She got given, she has to go on like a training course. And so it became this free speech debate. Should you be able to say whatever you want? I was arguing the case of like, no, there has to be some provisions. And a lot of people would draw the line at, well, you just can't call for violence. I draw it a little bit further where the law drives the line as well, which is if you're using derogatory language to describe people, that is what the law classifies as hateful, and that goes beyond saying I don't like you because you're an idiot. So I don't like you because of your race, your gender, your sexuality. Those are all protected characteristics. You can hate me for anything, but you can't hate me for my sexuality because that leads to calls for violence. And we live in a world where it's illegal to be gay in a lot of countries, can carry the death penalty in some, and we've got to kind of be careful. We've got to protect people. You've watched it. What did you think? You can be honest. If you thought I was terrible, you can tell me.
I can't believe that you forced me to finally watch my first ever episode of Piers Morgan's Uncensored, because I think I've seen a few little clips here and there, but this was the first time that I saw the entire thing. And I think it's quite an interesting argument because obviously we're not saying that, you know, it's a nice thing to be able to use the F word, not the normal F word, but the other F word in regards to a homosexual man. But I think what we need to do is define the difference between what is distasteful and what is illegal. Because I think you said it quite nicely, although you did get a little bit of flack for it on the show. I think it definitely is not nice to use that word. You wouldn't use it in polite society, let's say. However, should you be arrested for using derogatory language in a private text message to a friend? I think absolutely not. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. And also that called back to, what was it, Piers Morgan's interview on Tucker Carlson's show, wasn't it? Where he was encouraged to say that word on air. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm almost completely on Piers' side on this. Because, yeah, of course, we don't want to say the word not because it's illegal, not because we think we might be arrested. Rather, we just don't want to say the word because it's distasteful. It's not something that we'd like to say, you know, in front of friends and, in polite society, as I like to put it.
The only thing that really bothered me about being on Piers' show, and I thought from my perspective, I mean, it was sort of almost a 5-on-1. So I actually watched it back and I thought, you know what, you did as well as you could have. But the only two things that really irritated me, one was that they didn't really understand my points around, it wasn't just that she had just used this F word to describe a gay person. Like if you read the news articles, it's saying that she sent a series of abusive and homophobic messages, and they were sent to a former friend who felt harassed enough that she then went to the police. The police then said that there was enough there for them to investigate. A prosecutor felt there was enough to prosecute. It wasn't just that she just randomly used this one word and it's a banned word and you're in trouble with the law for that. They do look at the wider context. They look at the intent. So they just tried to make it seem like, well, she just said this one word and how can we have the police kicking someone's door for one word? It's like, it's not just the one word by itself. It's what that word meant. It was the amount of times she was messaging this word as a whole thing, and they just didn't seem to get that. But the thing that really irritated me the most, and I don't know if you caught it, but they clipped a bit of what I said out, which I was like, that's not fair, because I was landing a good point, and that there's a bit, it's not a good edit, to be honest. It really clips like halfway through what I'm talking and then goes to Piers, and I didn't notice them do that anywhere. I know obviously you're doing a show, you've got to cut it down a little bit, but I just thought it was convenient that they cut it at that moment. So the point I was trying to land was just, look, there is the reality of living in the modern world, right? Like, we all want to see more convictions for murder, sexual assault, all of those big ones, of course. And I understand the public narrative of, why are we arresting people for words that they've said when this stuff is going on and it's not being investigated? And my whole point was, look, that is unfortunately just a bit of the reality of the world in which we live now. Like, if I were to punch Piers Morgan in the face in the studio after we'd had a little row and no one was there, it would be his word against mine, right? And I'd just say he walked into a camera. But if I were to text Piers Morgan and say, I'm going to break your leg, he can screenshot that and show it. So a lot of the times, it's just a reality of the law. Like, the burden of proof is there, right? Where it's like, look, they tweeted this to me. They text this to me. There's nowhere to really go to defend it. Whereas what happens between two people is a lot harder to prove, and you've got a higher burden of proof. And also the fact that you need a higher burden of proof to prove that someone assaulted someone versus, that they said something that was wrong to them, because those carry different sentences, right? Like, this woman was not sent to jail. She was sort of fined and stuff. And I just find that it's an odd comparison people always make to these more serious violent crimes that, of course, you want solved, and then compare them to the numbers of things where people have been pulled up for things that they've said. Because I don't ever see anyone sort of get a parking ticket or a speeding ticket, and then they're like, why are they catching me for speeding when there's murderers walking around out there? You know what? Yeah, what you did was not on the level of murder, but you still just got to pay your fine, like, because you were caught speeding.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of nuance in this conversation. I think the big shocking event from this occurrence is the fact that there were, 11 police officers that arrived at her door, and she was unclothed at the time. So obviously, that's a big sensationalist, headline that you can put in the paper. But I think there's a lot of parallels here between this and the Lucy Connolly story from a while back, where she tweeted, some language that incited violence, and then she removed it almost straight away. But she was still arrested and spent some time in prison, I believe. And I think a lot of people on the right, especially those people who are very much, for their free speech, which we all should be supporting. A lot of people are misconstruing this as to say that, no, actually, you should be able to say whatever you want and not face the consequences of that. And that's what free speech is. Whereas I believe what free speech is that, basically you should be able to say what you want. Socially, there might be consequences, but I don't think you should be, arrested for it necessarily, unless if it crosses a certain line. And then, if that incites hatred, if that incites violence, then there's a case to be made for that. But obviously, it's quite a fine line. Who judges that? Then it is all up to debate, really. So I think we're not saying that this lady is a especially nice person, but should she have been met at the door by 11 police officers? Maybe not.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I made the point in the show about saying, like, look, you need to articulate yourself better. Like, you should, for me, free speech is, you should still be able to make your point, whatever you want to say, however controversial or uncomfortable, but you've got to do it properly. You've got to use the right words and phrase things properly. You can't just go in and start screaming derogatory terms at people, because and that doesn't work, right? That doesn't have cut through either. But I think free speech is a really, it'd be interesting if the human race survives the next 300 years. When they look back on this time, I think that they will forgive us for having some wobbles, because they'll be like, oh my God, like, they suddenly had all this technology and anyone could pick up a phone and speak to anyone else in the world and broadcast to the entire world. Like, we'd never seen that. And so, these conversations would have just happened in kitchen tables, in the 90s, and no one would have ever recorded them or anything. And now suddenly everything we say, there's almost a digital copy of it. And that changes things, and the ability of how many people we can speak to at once. And I could misspeak right here, and then it could be clipped to become a viral meme, and I'll never be able to live it down. So it's a high stakes time in which we live. And I'm sure we will, as a society, figure our way out through it and what's proportionate and what's not. But I think this is just the only way out is through.
Yeah. And there's also, to speak of cultural differences as well, I believe that the lady said that she quite often used that particular word in regards to, within her group of friends, within her community. And it doesn't necessarily collate to, a slur against a gay person. But I think it's quite reductive to say that she didn't know the associations of the word in the wider community, because everyone knows that word, is a derogatory word for a gay person. And for her to say
Yeah.
that she was completely ignorant of it, I think that was definitely a bit of a reach. And I think the
Mm.
argument as well sort of highlighted the cultural differences between, the right in America and the right in the UK. Because in America, it seems to be that, like if it's legal, I should be able to say it and I will say it. Whereas in the UK, it's like, yeah, technically, you probably won't be arrested, although she kind of was in this case. But because it's in bad taste, I understand that I probably could say it if I really wanted to, but I won't say it because, it's not a nice thing to say. And I think that's definitely the point between Piers and Tucker's particular interview, like how different their stances were.
I think it was very interesting to hear from some of the Americans that basically tried to pretend like they have no restrictions on speech. Or it's like every country has restrictions on speech. You cannot blackmail people, for instance. You cannot dox people, for example. And even, from America, I mean, I don't live there. I'm not American, but it seems like they have pretty good defamatory laws. Like, it seems like a lot of people get sued. Didn't Donald Trump sue someone once because they called him a
Completely.
millionaire and not a billionaire? And it's like, I mean, that speech, was that person not entitled to their speech to call you a millionaire? So I don't buy this whole, oh, well, we're land of the free. It's like, no, there's still restrictions. They may not be where ours are, but that's the point, right? It's like, where is the line and what are we all comfortable with?
Yeah, I think this is very much a case where the law hasn't quite kept up to to technology, really, to the way that people use technology to project their opinions. However, I do think that what happened in this particular case wasn't probably the best look for the UK government as a whole and our laws here.
Well, on that note, sticking on that technology theme, let's move on to our next story.
Subscribe for more content.